welcome everybody. Welcome back to the TalentNet Live. I know it's been a long time in the making. I am thrilled to welcome my guest today from the great state of Texas, the city of Dallas, Mr. Craig Fisher. Craig, what's happening, man?
Adam, how you doing? It's great to be here. Fantastic, beautiful weather in Texas, and what a cool intro you've got there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I have to update that one. That one's from like 3 years ago. Look at the pictures of my kids at the end of it, and I'm like, my kids are much older. I have a studio now, but yes, thank you, and I appreciate it. And everyone who's tuning in, either live or on the replay, thank you so much for choosing to spend time with Craig and I. I got this new soundboard. I have like some intro music, so let's try this out. Can you hear this? Is that coming through?
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do was welcome back to the TalentNet Live. It is Thursday, October 26th, right? I lose track. 26th of the year, 2023. I'm thrilled to welcome my guest today, Mr. Craig Fisher. Craig has a brand new book out called Hiring Humans, and today we're going to break it down and talk about what it's all about, the process, and all that kind of fun stuff. So Craig, let's get into it. You're no stranger to crafting thought leadership. Well, actually, let's take a step back. If you would kindly introduce yourself to my audience, some folks may know you, some may not. Tell us who you are and what you do best.
Absolutely. My name's Craig Fisher. I am an advisor to employers worldwide on talent attraction, recruitment process improvement, technology selection and integration. I'm also an advisor to technology and services vendors in the recruitment space and HR space. And I have been doing that since 2009 when I started the first ever hashtag chat for recruiting on Twitter.
He's been around the block, and we applaud you for all your efforts. Anyone who's had the privilege to see Craig speak live, I have a couple of times, and he's inspiring, a fantastic orator, and someone that I learn a lot from. We've been at the same events, and just watching you speak and the way you carry yourself, and really being a champion for our industry. And you've seen it all, been there, done that, the ups and downs, and you bring a really unique perspective from a couple of different ways. One, from DEI&B, from technology, from leadership, administration, and all those pieces too. So let's talk about the book. What was the impetus behind writing this book?
Well, so I'm big on documenting anything that you do, right? If you can't prove it, it didn't happen. If you can't show it later, right, it's not lasting. And in employment and talent acquisition, the biggest cause of strife in hiring people is turnover in your own organization. The second biggest cause is turnover from the vendors that you work with to help you hire, engage, onboard, and nourish people in your organization. And so if you document something, then it's forever. You can pass that on to people who are coming after you to do the job and carry on the work. So I document case studies for every employer that I do interesting work with. And it just got to be a time where I had enough of the right case studies that I could tell the story in the proper order of how I do talent attraction, SEO for jobs and employers, good candidate experience, onboarding, and also engagement.
There's so much to unpack here around the book, and I also it's a time capsule as well too. I wrote right in the beginning of the pandemic. I wrote the pause course. I wanted to get down all my thoughts and IP on how I created my podcast and how I use it as a business development tool. And it's also paying it forward, right? You're documenting and you're sharing the knowledge. But let's talk about the process for you. You mentioned that you're compiling these case studies. You're adding your insights, your POV on it. What was one of those aha moments for you during the process of writing this book?
So at one point, I had gotten quite a few of my ideas down and gotten it to where we thought we had a book. It was pretty detailed and pretty long. And I previewed it to some friends that are, you would know, right? The Tim Sackett's of the world. And I got heckled, and it was pretty awesome. Private Zoom meeting.
What did they heckle you on?
They said, you can't put everything in this book, right? You've done so much. You you can't put it all here. And I realized they were right. I needed to tell this story, and this story is basically, it's kind of what I do. It's the consulting work that I do. It showcases that, but it also is a really good primer for anyone in talent acquisition at the leadership level or just getting started, to help you think outside the box. And I realized that, let's do that first. And then the principles here can also be applied to sales teams, marketing teams, job seekers. And so there may be more books like that.
So I want to take a step back. I'm curious to get your take. What have you seen over the last 3 years since the pandemic started? Generally speaking, in regards to talent, where have we dropped the ball? Where have we really let candidates and internal employees down? And
Mhm.
where have you seen? I'll pause there. We'll talk about the good stuff after. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly over the last couple of years.
So initially, when COVID first reared its head, a lot of employers began to think that we were going to have a hiring slowdown, that business was going to slow down. Uh, Really, the opposite happened. I mean, we had a bit of a boon. It was like
Right.
going to war for the United States, right? Jobs were created, products were produced, and we very quickly found ourselves with a talent shortage in several areas. And so, not understanding sort of the economic landscape of even a pandemic was kind of mistake number one. And then not realizing the whiplash effect that would take place, after that
Hmm.
subsides, mistake number two. I mean, even if we did realize the whiplash effect, the Fed didn't really act
No.
quite quickly enough, and there were several things. Some of this, economic season that we're going through now could have been avoided to an extent.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I mean, for anyone who's following the timeline, right? Interest rates were low. There was cheap money out there
Mm.
through PPP loans and other government subsidized. And what
Maybe
companies
too
did is
much.
they to say the least, they binge
Yeah.
hired. They absolutely binge hired, and it padded their numbers. It looked good to investors. It looked good to growth. And let's talk about what happened there. All these
Yeah.
teams were robust, right? Like they all of a sudden people were staffed up. Things
Mhm.
were happening for the most part internally. But what was really going on?
Yeah, so we went through a period early on there where we we overdosed on easy apply,
Hmm.
right? So Indeed made easy apply and kind of stopped at some point giving you the ability to directly integrate to your ATS without quite a few hurdles.
Mm,
And a lot of employers jumped on that easy apply bandwagon, but they didn't ask any qualifying questions in that process. And so you end up with, thousands or tens of thousands of applicants for jobs that really you need 10 people for.
right. They made it too easy. Like it was literally like the Staples easy button. People were
That's
smashing that, and they were indiscriminately applying.
yeah.
And but I don't think, and obviously you have maybe you could add some data to it. It looks on the optics on the outside make it look easier to the job seeker, but what it's really doing is completely log jamming the entire application process, and the folks that are hurting the most are the most qualified ones.
That's
There's
right.
only so much volume that the recruiter. Listen, everyone knows this. There's no ATS bot. There's a human being on the back end that is
Yeah.
rejecting your email, your resume, unless there's a qualifying question around a certain skill, knockout questions we like to call them, a
Mhm.
certain skill, geographical location, status from an employment visa kind of status thing, or for example, I'm working tech jobs that require FBI and Poly background. If you don't have it, it's a deal breaker.
Right.
Aside from that, there's a human.
Yeah. There's a human, and there are easy ways with spot technology or even sort of advanced Indeed technique to ask some of those qualifying questions. Do
Right.
you live in the country that we're hiring, and are you currently able to work there? And do you have XYZ certification if that's required? Like a couple of quick questions. Still, right? You want a short apply, and if there's a longer tail on the back of that, come back around later to have the candidate finish that, especially if you've got Workday or some sort of login screen that you
Right.
have to get through in order to apply.
You want to keep the friction low, but also, in my opinion, have enough friction where there is a tad of effort. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, we don't want people having to rewrite their resume. We want
Right.
simple parsing or uploading. Those are basics. Those are the one-on-one stuff. But qualifying questions, in my opinion, are important, and I think it also forces the candidate to think, "Am I qualified for this job?"
Right.
I can't even tell you. I mean, as a in the trenches recruiter, I now have to put on certain roles that I'm posting, US only remote, no sponsorship. I can't even tell you how many people disregard that
Oh,
and
yeah.
apply. So that's just a minimum. But if you think about like the early stages of pandemic, how easy it was to apply, the
Yeah.
log jam, and what how that affects the system.
You said something interesting about the ATS bot earlier, and that's a real thing, right? I mean, there is no ATS bot, but the perception is that the ATS is using AI to screen out your resume. And so you have to just copy the keywords of every job into your resume and then apply. And if there's no qualifying questions in between there, then yes, you are corrupting the system for the
Good point.
qualified candidates. It's really tough. And nothing has really changed since we were doing this 10 and 20 years ago,
Paper.
right? I mean, what happens is resumes pile up in a database, whether that's your inbox or your applicant tracking system or whatever it is you're using. And then you go search through those resumes with keywords to try to pull out the ones that maybe are the best match. Um, it's not possible if you've got tens of thousands of applicants to fully review all those resumes.
I was looking at open recruiter roles the other day, and there was a recruiter role posted, and 3 hours, there's 1,300 applicants.
Mhm.
I mean, how's that even manageable? So if you think about if you're the recruiter on the back end who's
Right.
reviewing all these, you're going to be searching. Now, I've seen some great tech where it's scoring and it's evaluating,
Yeah.
which is not a knockout bot because it's not automatically eliminating, but it is making the recruiter's job a bit easier. Well, let's throw a curveball here. Is there a way to hack it? And like, even though you might hack it and get your way into a call, you still have to prove yourself on the interview, right?
Yeah.
Like, what would you advise candidates as far as like be truthful, just be straight up?
Be truthful, obviously, be straight up, but be responsive and be thoughtful in your responses. So here's the thing. There's matching software, right? We know that there are software
Yeah.
vendors that can stack rank your resume
Hmm.
or your application and kind of put you in a B or C category. Now, is there bias built into that because they're using AI? Maybe, right? And they might have
Hmm.
to prove that it's not biased, that process. That's fine. But I like a system better that evaluates your communication and interactions.
Hmm.
So if there's an automated response, hey, great, thanks for sending your resume. Can you answer a couple of quick questions? And then it evaluates how you answer that. Right there are there's some great ways to do that, and that's a really better methodology, if you ask me.
So I'm gonna give a shout out right now. I met the team at Plum when we were in Nashville,
Yeah.
and I went through a demo of it. And I'm not
Mhm.
fully endorsing their. I mean, I would love to endorse them if they want to sponsor that. That's on the table, Plum folks.
Yeah.
But from an overall perspective of what that technology does and how it makes it easier, this is a technology that sits on top of an ATS system. It sits in between the ATS system and the recruiter. And what it's
Yeah.
doing, it is actually, it sends out a survey to qualified candidates,
Mhm.
and it's pretty short. It's about 8 minutes. It's not some long, crazy psychological assessment, but those questions have been formatted in a way that's going to assess your hard and soft skills and score you on that. And they've removed the element of gaming it.
Right.
It's one of those things where you can't game it. It's just, it's too impossible. And that's given the edge to recruiters as well there too, because it's going to stack rank candidates and make it easier for them to review applicants. What's your general thoughts on tools like this?
That's absolutely the way to do it. We might as well go ahead and do a shout out to Jason Putnam right now. In
Sponsorship
fact, I'm meeting
here.
with him later today. That's funny. They're going to
And
show
you could
me.
send them this link and say the podcast would love to. And
Sure.
Katrina's great. Katrina was awesome yesterday. Shout out to Katrina.
Yeah. Well, so you
Shameless
might
plug. Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
shameless plug.
Do I have a shameless plug button? I could use the record set. Shameless plug. Sorry.
So as an employer, you might be stuck with your applicant tracking system. Okay. So fine. And also, employers call me all the time and say, hey, can you help us select a new applicant tracking system, kind of on the down low, because we don't want our vendor to know.
Don't tell them we're shopping and they're too expensive. It doesn't
really work well. Yeah, and what I say is, first of all, have you really thought this through, and have you actually looked at the contract very closely of what you've got? Because most of the time they're not using all of the features or not properly using what they've got, right? And their relationship with that vendor is broken for various reasons, and it's not the best. I mean, whatever you're going to get that's better is not necessarily better. I mean, just going to be honest, right? It's just going to be a 9-month to a 1.5-year process and a lot of money.
Onboarding and transferring and learning, like underutilized tools is a great point, Craig.
Yeah. And so understanding what you've got is a big part of that. And then understanding what could plug into that as an overlay or an attachment, right? That can help fix what you think is wrong with it. And there's plenty of, I mean, there are hundreds of great tools. And so just understanding which tools work with which platforms, which integrate well, which are backlogged, which are understaffed, right? All of these things, if you know someone who knows the shortcuts and the answers, it helps to be able to ask those questions.
How does a company know if they need it versus want it versus just being sold by, the sales rep?
Yeah, you're always being sold by the sales rep, or whether you, right? I mean, you're seeing if they're any good. You're seeing ads and you're seeing social posts, and they're in your peripheral vision, and that's smart. That's just good marketing. So you have to be wily enough to know, okay, yes, I'm being sold to. Yes, I feel like drinking a Diet Coke right now for some reason, right? But you don't just go drink Diet Coke all the time.
No.
But vendors come to me and say, hey, help us push our product. And I have to be of the mindset of, let me see your product and let me talk to your engineers and let me meet your CEOs. And right. It's the whole thing. It's not just the product. Software.
What do you look for when you're interviewing them? What do you look? Do you put yourself in? I assume you put yourself in two camps: the client, and within that, the day-to-day recruiter who's in the system, and then the decision makers in the organization from the ROI cost standpoint, and the full integration, and then also the job seeker standpoint.
So I'm the employer advocate second. I'm the job seeker advocate first. Okay, so job seekers, then employer, then software vendors, in that order. And so I put myself in the job seeker shoes, as all employers should, and say, is this going to actually help them? Or is this just something that somebody in our organization is buddies with and is pushing on us?
Yeah, they're going to get a trip to Vegas on the back end of this one.
Or do we have some, big corporate partnership with SAP, and so therefore we have to get all their
their preferred vendors, right?
So when an employer comes to me and says, Craig, we want to add AI to our technology stack, and William Tincup will say that saying technology stack makes you sound old. So we'll call it something else, technology system. And the first question is why, right? This is what employers need to be asking. Why? Why are we doing this? Well, we want to automate things like, interview scheduling. Okay, well, but that's not AI. That's simple automation that's been around for years. And you don't have to go pay for a platform boasting AI and lots of features and benefits to get that. That's a simple add-on or hack. And so you need to take a holistic look at what you've got and create a before and after scenario. Where do you want to be? And do you need, and this is how I evaluate some of these vendors. Will you sell just this, or is it required that I spend the full $350,000 to get your entire platform, right?
Interesting. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, AI. And I roll into RecFest in Nashville on the first day, and I take a scan around the grounds, and every vendor I see that I saw in the UK, it's their same name. They just added .ai to the end of it. I'm like, what the F? I'm like, guys, A, do you know what AI is? How are you incorporating it? How is this making a difference? And is this just some shit, we got to slap this AI sticker on here because that's what everyone else is doing? And then I go over to the booth and I start asking them questions about their data inputs. Are you just taking your current databases? What AI are you using? How are you using it? What's your take? And is it really necessary?
It's not necessary. And so the bottom line is everyone is using AI in their day-to-day, right, to get work done. There is AI in your phone, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
phone is the most knowledgeable thing about
Autocorrect.
you, right? Um,
Well, it's
I
machine
mean,
learning too. I think people overuse it too. Like, let's talk AI, what it really means, right? There's lots of components and various levels of AI, machine learning, machine intelligence,
it
different
is
levels.
machine learning, but the apps that are starting to shape our lives really get to know us,
Mm-hmm.
right? The health app on your phone or your watch, right? Things like this, Spotify, all of these tools do use like pretty smart AI algorithms to adjust, right? And make things more make things more convenient for you, right? Possibly more convenient for you to buy stuff also. But yes, it's automation, it's machine learning. Is it truly smart? Well, I mean, Elon Musk says that your phone is the sentient extension of your being. So maybe.
Scary at times.
Yeah. But no, not all technology for software vendors in recruiting and HR needs to boast AI.
Don't
They're
have to have
using
it.
it, right? Is it really part of their tech stack for building the product that they're offering? Or is it a button that allows you to go out and search Chat GPT and bring back results into your dashboard?
From a recruiter standpoint, this has been fun, and kudos to Kevin Logan Jr., my good friend Alex Fish, who have been uh, pushing me to really dig deep into personal use of ChatGPT and playing with
Yeah.
ChatGPT 3.5 and 4 over the last few days in different ways, from helping me create outreach emails, and it helps with tone and sentiment. Like, I think I'm a good writer, and then I take that same message and I put it through with different prompts, and it's giving
Yeah.
me a whole different perspective. Now, do I take that as gospel? No. Do
No,
I
you
take
can't.
that as insight? No, because sometimes it comes off a little robotic, in my opinion. But the thing is,
Cheesy sometimes.
correct, and it's a little bit automated.
Yeah.
But where I found from a recruiter standpoint, and Kevin and I see him in the comments there, we've been putting job descriptions and getting Boolean searches coming out of that,
Mhm.
and it's the not so obvious search words that are making the difference and helping you think, and being that like, I feel like I'm the Terminator sometimes, that I got this third
Mhm.
eye and I could just utilize it. So recruiters out there, I urge you to embrace technology.
Oh, yeah.
Don't be shy from it. Use it. And people say it's going to take over your job. Well, it might if you don't know how to use it, and you could.
That's right.
So what's let's get back to. I'm sorry, you have another point on this?
Well, it's just a tool, right? I mean,
Just a tool.
it doesn't work by itself. Neither do phones, neither does the internet, neither does a calculator, right? Somebody's got to wind the clocks. So you have to learn to use the tools that are available and that are modern. And if you're stuck, saying, I'm not even going to be on Facebook, then, well, good luck in recruiting.
All right. So I want to take a quick left turn for a minute, and then I want to get back to the book here. So I've been doing a lot of competitive analysis out there,
Mm.
and really trying to gut check myself on, like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What am I maybe not looking at? What are my blind spots? So I've been doing a lot of competitive analysis in this down market when I have a little bit of bandwidth,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing companies just doing things different, whether it be just the model, where they're
Mhm.
turning the recruiting model on its head. I mean, I personally think that the contingency model is awful, right? And that's a whole
Yeah.
other podcast. I mean, I do it because I have to be competitive. I
Right.
mean, I think the future really is fractional, high touch RPO,
Mhm.
and really customized. That's another core offering that we do here at NHP and PNT. But I'm looking more about how companies are reaching out and how they're using these automation tools. For example, a friend called me yesterday and she said, "Hey, Adam, you have a minute?" This recruiter, quote unquote, on LinkedIn reached out to me.
Mm.
Her profile looks something fishy about it.
Yeah.
I replied, "Yes, I'm interested." And then they automatically connected with somebody else. Are these companies really creating these quasi bot AI generated profiles for
Yes.
algorithmic driven lead gen? And then they drive, I saw it. I mean, I know the inside baseball, and the red flags were in my face, but for the average job seeker, they would just get on those calls. All of a sudden you're submitting your resume to something without even a job, just to get in their database.
That's right. So the fear is, and the danger of doing automated marketing on LinkedIn is that you'll get caught and your account will be suspended.
Mhm.
So yes, they create fake accounts and run ads with them. And so, I mean, it is
Mhm.
gaming the system. Eventually, LinkedIn will crack down on that, as they do every few years.
Few
When
years.
they do.
Few
But
years.
yeah, so
How about they should do it every few weeks?
they should do it every few weeks.
Few years. And they just let go 700 people. Who's going to be policing LinkedIn?
Right. Yeah. Not well. LinkedIn doesn't do it well enough. I'm a fan of LinkedIn for what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of LinkedIn constantly trying to push recruiter seats on everyone.
Mm.
I don't think you need that. I mean, if you know how to use LinkedIn, let's talk about that someday.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I just got hit with my I forgot my recruiter was on auto payment, and then I look at my credit card. I'm like, oh, thank you, LinkedIn for
Right.
for that one year. So I
For
want
your annual renewal. Yeah.
Thank you for the annual renewal that you don't even give me a second to think about, because
Yeah.
if I want to renew it or not, right? And then if you anyway, I'm not going to go down that. All right. So I want to talk about the employee the candidate experience, and as an in the trenches recruiter, I think that this is an area that has so much room to grow, and it always starts at the top, in my opinion. If the leadership cares about hiring, and if the leadership cares about the process, it's going to trickle down.
Mhm.
Now, of course, there's different ways to look at it, because you could have, folks working at TA who aren't great, or they do care and they're not getting the support from above. And it blows my mind how companies do not prioritize and invest in the candidate experience. And then they wonder why they can't fill roles, and they wonder why there's attrition in their organization.
Right.
I'd love your perspective here.
So, in my opinion, we unpack our fancy new machines, right? Our applicant tracking system or CRM, whatever it is, and we think we can set it and forget it. And we don't take enough time to customize the messaging and the timing and all of those things that come out of the box, right? And so when you're an employer thinking about candidate experience, you've got to apply to your own jobs first and foremost. Apply to your job and note the things, not just the technical things, but the feeling,
the
that you
messaging,
get,
the tone,
right? The tone, the messaging, the timing. How long does it take? And then is there a huge pause between your response and whatever happens next? If it doesn't feel good, it probably isn't good, right? And so then you have to look at, what levers do I have to flip in order to make that more seamless and better and feel personal? And that's really the thing. The people that we're trying to get to apply to our jobs are our future coworkers.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, if they're not right for that job, great, but their next door neighbor might be, or their uncle or their daughter, whatever. We want to make fans out of them, and we're not doing a good job most of the time.
There's such an opportunity to gain customers and loyal supporters by the way you treat folks in the process.
That's right.
And the way they refer it. If you treat someone well with empathy, care, and understanding, and you reject them, hey, I'm still a fan of Coca-Cola. I applied. I didn't work there. No hard feelings. But if they treat me like shit, screw it. I'm going to Pepsi.
Sure.
Right? Because these are your customers. This is your well, generally speaking. And the other part of it too is the negative effect on your current employees, attrition, right?
Yeah.
Like when people are let go, people are doing 2-3 times the work. Don't you want to fill those roles quickly with the best? Like there's that cross section, right? Best quality people, fastest amount of time.
Right.
That's what we're tasked to do as recruiters.
Yeah.
And when you're getting slowed down from the top and you're not giving the tools and you're not giving the support, it's a recipe for disaster.
It's a recipe for disaster that can easily be avoided, right? I mean, we are sitting on top of a lot of talent data that we generally haven't done enough with, right? We hire
So
analytics
much data.
peoples and we generate these reports and we talk about it, but we don't actually take any action on the data that we have. With ChatGPT and generative AI, we're about to be able to really analyze and take action on this mountain of data that we've got to be able to fix a lot of these problems. I mean, we're about to be in a data revolution because of
Can't wait.
the way these tools can summarize data quickly for us.
And those data points are going to be interesting because there's traditional metrics, which is time to hire, time to fill, which I think are kind of antiquated because there's a lot of X factors that kind of go into it. So let's make those metrics, which I think are valuable, actually be populated with more informed with smarter data, with additional data points that handle all those nuances and X factors.
Mhm.
Are we getting there?
I like things like I like simple metrics, Adam.
Mm.
I think we overcomplicate things. I think we use too many flowery words in employment and hiring and consulting, and I think we overcomplicate things. So I like things like um, hiring velocity,
Tell me what that
and
means.
so that means, right? Are you able to hire enough of the right people quickly enough? Right. And so if you think about things like time to interview versus time to fill.
Pause on that for a second.
Yeah.
Time to interview is
Mhm.
such a critical metric from the time someone applies
Yeah.
to their first interaction to the second one to that whole system of variances between stages. That's a critical metric.
Critical metric and cost per interview could be also a very good critical metric because what happens at the recruiter level, you're responsible up to the interview part, right?
Mhm.
Once you get the interview set, then the rest is sort of up to the hiring manager or right, whatever comes after that. Now you may be responsible to go back and finish closing that person,
Hmm.
and you should be closing that person all along.
Always be
But
closing.
getting the right people, right? If they've got an interview, then they're the right people, right? Or at least they're close to the right people. And I think that's a very overlooked metric right there.
It's almost like you're a baseball guy. Are you Rangers? You're a Rangers fan.
Yeah, yeah.
Congrats.
Thank
You
you.
got a couple of my Mets in there. You
Oh
know, you
yeah,
got Scherzer
boy
and
do I.
DeGrom. You got my old guys.
Yeah.
Scherzer's useless. I mean, the guy can't win in the playoffs, so you're happy to take that salary, and we got some
I
good.
think he's great.
We got some nice prospects for him, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But I got no skin in this game in this World Series.
Yeah.
I really don't. I like the scrappiness of Arizona. I
Sure.
always kind of root for the scrappiness there.
Yeah.
I got nothing against the Rangers.
Mhm.
We'll sit back and watch that.
They
So
beat the
what-
Astros, Adam. That's all you have to know.
I hate.
Right.
Hate. Going back to, I'm a Mets fan. My earliest childhood memories of the '86 playoffs and World Series. Mike Scott with that split finger his split finger and the cheating, and it was just
Two seams. Yeah.
it's just nasty. Okay, the metric that and I bring up baseball for a reason because there's a metric I love in baseball called the WAR, wins above replacement,
Mhm.
right? And that's kind of a quality to hire metric.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. If there's a way to match the person that left versus the quality of the hire, and how good is the team upskilling and upgrading the entire team? Like, let's do a little sabermetrics
Right.
mindset into hiring and recruiting.
So this goes back to my point about documenting things well, right? As recruiters, as business people, as employees, whatever, you should be documenting every good outcome and how you did it. Okay. And so that the person walking into your role when you leave it
Mhm.
has a really good roadmap on what was successful and how did we do it and what should we keep doing. And we don't do enough of that, right? So
No.
onboarding is like, hey, watch all these videos and we'll talk to you in 3 days. And
You're lucky if you get a computer these days.
yeah, yeah, and maybe you get a buddy that's going to help you get oriented with the company, and but nobody says, "Hey, read these notes from the person who just left." I mean that rarely happens.
I've never seen somebody leave a love note, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't happen. People don't
Right.
document the process.
Yeah, no, they don't document the process well enough. And I mean, I proactively, a lot of people who have been leaders and managers will write sort of a journal of what's happened, right? It's your Kanban or whatever. So, but I don't think it's universally accepted as a best practice.
Right. I mean, we could sit here and nitpick the job process all day, and I think that a lot of the trash talking in the process from candidates on LinkedIn is warranted. Because
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of companies that have broken I think my opinion is if you actually strip away a lot of the nonsense and done in a vacuum in an efficient way, the current process isn't terrible.
Right.
How else? How are we supposed to evaluate someone's history? Now, I always say like use it as an indicator, but it's not a predictor,
Mhm.
right? When I'm looking at a resume, but how else are we supposed to review somebody? How else are we supposed to say if someone's qualified on paper from a skill set perspective for this role versus just having conversations with 100% of the people that apply? There has to be an indicator. What are some of your thoughts about the future
Mhm.
of career skill identity
Mhm.
in the future and how that's presented for future roles?
So it's interesting
Jets and
because,
shits, man.
yeah, you talk about skills-based hiring, and that's a big topic right now. And so that kind of overrides work history, right? So if you've got these skills, you should be hiring based on skills, right? Great. I'm not sure I 100% believe in that. But what I do believe in is quality of work, right? So what? You were only at one place for 6 months. Great. What did you do there? What was
What
the
did you do there? I asked that
yeah,
question to Bozeman St. John. She said the same thing. I said, does it matter you're only at Netflix 1 year? She goes, well, what did I do there?
right? Yeah, and there are people. So there are a few different types of employees you can hire, right? You can hire a ringer that is someone you need right now. You can hire a player that is someone you're going to want to keep long term, right? Or then there are B and C players that
Mm-hmm.
are there for different roles. But if you're and look at the job that you're hiring for. Do you need someone that could come in and be this contract hitman or woman
Hired gun.
and right and fix this mercenary type of project? So if that's what you need, yes, you're going to have someone that's got 6 months here and 3 months there because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm. You can't always judge it based on timelines. You need to say, what did you do when you were there? What impact did you make in that organization at that time? I mean, the worst one I see is hire for character, train for skill,
Uh-huh.
and I say you're missing the big caveat on that one.
Uh-huh.
Assuming that they have the skills unnecessary, like your doctor, you want to have a medical degree,
Right.
right? It's an extreme analogy, but it's true.
Yeah.
So, what have you seen as far as innovations? Well, let me ask you this. Let's go,
Mhm.
let's kick it back. When you're interviewing somebody,
Mhm.
assuming by the time they get to you in the interview process that they
Yeah.
have the core skills necessary for that position,
Right.
in a 45, 60-minute conversation, what are you asking to ascertain skill, values, and character?
Tell me about yourself. And I shut up. And I mean, right? You can't ask specific questions about their religion or their are they married or they have kids and
Mhm.
right?
It's
That's
tough.
you can't do that. So an open-ended question is the best way to get someone and how good are they at it? Right? That requires someone to dance and to have a story and to be able to communicate well. And it's difficult.
How do we remove? I mean, in this day and age, in 2023, us as recruiters and talent professionals need to be mindful of diversity, neurodiverse, introverted folks that, I mean, listen,
Mhm.
an interview is better or worse. You're on a stage, you're performing.
Yep.
And that's what the process is for most
Mhm.
jobs. I mean, I think certain technical roles you could avoid some of the, if you don't have to be front and center people, you're not judging on that. But in this day and age, you're handicapping a lot of folks. I don't like that word. You're limiting folks' abilities who might have certain issues.
So I believe that some of your recruiting team should be trained, right, to level the playing field for those folks. And it's very important because a lot of these workers, employees, coworkers, right, whatever you want to, they are our partners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are extremely good at their job, but they might not be the best at explaining how or why they're good at that job. And right, various other things. And so you need to have some training for your recruiting team in how to help level things up for them.
Smart. It's about that comes back to DEI and B, right?
Mhm.
Like, how do you tie in your HR teams into that? A quick little anecdote, and I never really talked about this. One of my most interesting and challenging interviews early on. I was working at an ad agency, and it was a copywriter position, and the candidate pinged me beforehand and said, "I am almost 95% deaf," and now I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
And I wrote back, I go, how would you best prefer to be communicated? And he wrote back to me, he said, we're going to go on Zoom, I forget, we're using some weird platform back before Zoom was a thing.
Mhm.
And we used the chat. And when he was able to talk to me, he did, but he prepared me and set it up. And I took a moment to think about
Mhm.
I'm going to slow down. I'm going to read, I'm going to listen. And I think us as recruiters, we need to listen. Recruiters are getting piled on right now. Companies
Yeah.
have cut back the skeleton crews. The amount of applications have never been heavier. The process is slowing down, but we still have to lead and work with empathy because we
That's
are
right.
the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Us in the trenches recruiters, we're gatekeepers. How do you coach companies and teams for newer or even more advanced recruiters to be more empathetic when sometimes we actually are in quite an administrative role at times, unfortunately?
Right. So first and foremost, you need to understand your recruiting team and how do they treat their colleagues, right? The people they're currently working with. Are they good teammates? Are they open? Are they helpful? Are they mentors? And then put it back to them and say, these candidates are your colleagues. These are people that, right? They work in the same field as
Right.
you, right? Or as our company, as our business, right? If you treated someone in accounting the way you might treat this candidate, would that be okay? Because that person, whether right currently they are a fit for this organization or this role, that can change.
Yeah.
So the whole theory and one of the best features of a tool like Eightfold is it looks at an employee's background because you get what do you get? You get a resume when an employee comes into your organization, right? You get a resume when an employee enters your organization, and then 5 years later, you don't have an updated resume from them. So it's whatever is in your applicant tracking system and your HRIS system, and that's the information you have. So there are tools, right? Seek Out does a good job of it. Eightfold does a good job of it. It says
That's a sponsorship button.
okay, that says this person after 5 years should by now have these skills and possibly these certifications and might be a good fit for these jobs in your organization. Right. And that's the type of sort of attitude we need to have towards candidates that aren't necessarily currently a match. Say, listen, we would love for you to join I don't like the word talent community, but join our work community and keep us up to date on your progress, because we'd love to know if there is a future fit for you here, and just keep in touch.
Communication and God, I mean, I've been having this conversation with a lot of people. When we go back to data, Craig, the sheer amount, if we're talking a large, somewhat enterprise size organization, let's just say it's a 5,000 person company, and you can figure out back in napkin how many active roles there are, how many applications. Out of all those applications, how many get through and we're talking a funnel here now,
Right.
get through the interview process, get to a final round. And final round usually comes down to a couple of candidates that are all qualified, and it comes down to a couple of factors. Companies have such a database of qualified candidates that they've invested time and money into screening that there's other options for them. I've been talking to a couple of companies and ideas about how do you take these pre-screen resources and funnel them into other opportunities. And that's part of the candidate experience. Say, hey, you're not good for this role. And I'm paraphrasing, but if you're interested to opt in here, here's a job board of 10 other companies that might be a good fit.
Yeah. Well, and think as an organization, who are the companies that we partner with? We're not competing with them, but they're our partners, right? They're our accounting firm, or they're our vendor for X, Y, and Z. They are, right? For a lot of these white collar jobs, and even a lot of the hourly jobs, there are applicable, even maybe better roles in some of your partner organizations.
Another company.
Right. And there are a few applicant tracking systems that kind of take this as the basis of their universe of candidates. So they say, all right, well, this candidate applied here. We're going to push potentially other good roles to them through our network or universe. Now, there's good and bad things about this. A lot of employers say, hey, that's my candidate. You know, I don't want anyone else to have them. But yeah, it's kind of an old school
right. Pepsi. I
1990s.
remember, that's a story like Pepsi would hoard all their a big thing with Facebook early in the day, the stories of them hiring people and Google just to keep them and not even have anything to do.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Stories.
Yeah.
They want to protect the talent.
That's a real thing.
Crazy shit.
Yeah. Well, and
I'll take that job. Please hire me, and I don't want to do anything, and just give me a paycheck all day long.
Yeah, then you just go post things on Reddit all day.
No show job alert. So let's talk about transitioning from no show. What's Craig Fisher's hot take on work from home, remote, in the office? What are you seeing? There's your open-ended. Tell me about yourself. I want to hear your point of view here. Wait, do we need some theme music? And now Craig is going to tell us his thoughts on work from home, return to office, POV.
Thank you, Adam. Employers want employees in the office because it's a control thing. So, I mean, that's the bottom line. You can't control your employee population as well if they're all remote. So it's a control thing. And we're going to have to, as employees, suffer through some of this. But where we will end up is not 100% back in the office. It'll be a blended work environment with some work from home. I mean, it's definitely going to be hybrid. And the work week will change because of this. We already see that office real estate is changing. And let's not make the same mistakes of the past, right? I mean, so we get one report that says, oh, people aren't as productive from home, after we've had 100 reports saying they're more productive from home. And we take this one report as now the gospel, which that's not accurate. I mean, you and I both know that we get more done from the house than we ever would from an office because of the commute, because of people walking in your office, because of, you name it, any number of things.
I will counterpoint on a couple of things here. First of all, whenever we're talking about return to office, work from home, we're obviously talking about jobs that can be that.
That's right.
Your surgeon, your mechanic, a lot of blue collar roles. You have to be physically doing it.
That's kind of a requirement. Yeah,
it is. You have to be there because that's where the equipment is. I mean, I have a couple of it's interesting because from a creative perspective, from the agency world where I come from in recruiting, I've been there firsthand, and I see that in-person collaboration, that energy, that magic comes in a creative space, in a creative environment. They've tried to replicate it. They've done a decent job. I had Kat Cole, the CEO of Athletic Greens, on the show, and she said, we've mastered it. We're really good at this remote thing, but we do pay a remote tax. There is a certain percentage that we pay from a creative efficiency, productivity standpoint, because here's the truth. Let's be honest. You and I, as upper middle class white males living in suburban areas, probably have a good physical space to work in our home or something else that we could utilize. There's a lot of this population that does not. They're stuck at home in small apartments, lots of kids, pets, animals, things that don't make it, or maybe rural areas where they may not have internet, or who is productive sitting at a kitchen table all day versus our nice, comfy offices. So I just think, and it's no knock on you, I just think it's a bias that we have to at least be mindful of, that some people are. My wife, for example, she is insane. She's not productive working from home. Now, albeit her commute's 12 minutes.
Yeah.
But there are people that need to be locked in, productivity. And then what happens with working parents from a career growth standpoint, where you're competing against other folks trying to climb the corporate ladder, and now you're working from home all the time, balancing kids, all that stuff. Yes, there's a positives of being there for them versus being in your dedicated space where you're present, you're getting the face time. There's no clear answer, in my opinion. I think
I like the FaceTime argument very much.
There's components to it.
There's plenty of components to it.
Right.
But what I see is, more often than not, and I've had fancy corporate jobs and I've led global teams, and I would go to my office in a fancy building, right after my fancy commute, and go into my space and
shut the door
and get on my computer and have my meetings because I've got a global team, right? Or even if it's someone that's just down the hall or on another floor, you're doing the same thing that we're doing right now most of the time. And so that ability for FaceTime, those Friday afternoon happy hours that you have in the lunchroom, they don't exist much anymore, to be real honest.
And you know what? I've been polling my suburban tribe of working parents professionally for the last couple of years, and I got to tell you something. A lot of folks are really enjoying. Well, for me, let me bubble back up. I've been preaching this. It comes down to companies offering choice, trust, and options. Right. Here are your choices. I trust you to do your job anywhere, and here are the options. If you want to come to the office, it's open. If you don't want to come in, you don't have to. Maybe there's core working hours, core meetings, and we all have ideas for that. But a lot of folks at this point, they enjoy going to the city 1 or 2 days a week when it's not mandatory, when they have a
Absolutely.
choice.
Yeah.
I want to get the hell out. I want to get out of my my athleisure, Lululemons I've been wearing all day long. I want to go to the city. I don't mind taking that train because I could catch up on a podcast, and like I like being around my colleagues. I like feeling like an adult and not just a big kid who has a job to do. And
Yeah.
they like that. The problem is, and you were alluding to it earlier, are these mandatory return to office. I mean, who was it? Nike just announced they have to return 4 days a week. Zoom. I mean, bro, you guys
That's
invented
crazy.
this shit. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Is it also maybe a justification of real estate expenses?
Well, it is. And it's one more thing that goes to show that your employer brand is critical to your consumer brand, right? If you're publicly treating your employees in a way that doesn't jive with your product, um, you're going to suffer. And Zoom clearly did. They took a big hit,
Mm-hmm.
right, when they announced that. And so we have to be just cognizant of using empathy in all of these situations. Um, Full-time in the office is not for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. Full-time at home is not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Somewhere in the middle is the balance. And that's going to be somebody's job. That's a whole
Mm-hmm.
new career now to figure that out.
I will not be signing up for that job. I will not be easy applying for that job. So I want to spend a few minutes before we bring it home here, and we're coming up to the 2:00 hour here on the East Coast, 1:00 in Central Time, and I can't do the math for Pacific.
That'd be 11 a.m. Central.
Thank you.
Pacific, sorry. Adam.
Thank you. There we go. I want to talk about employer branding for a moment here. This is something I see Joel on the call and others.
Yeah.
Attracting talent.
Mhm.
What are you seeing out there? The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. So what I find very often with employers who have a really strong consumer brand or corporate brand is that 90% of the time, they don't take the extra effort to have a strong employer brand. There are some fantastic counterexamples like Estee Lauder and some of these companies that really go above and beyond to showcase what it's really like to work inside the organization and show their employees online on a regular basis, to show a day in the life, highlight them. It's employee of the week all the time there. And I absolutely love that approach. And I think in the future, where ghosting goes both ways, the employers that have an authentic and transparent culture that they showcase to the outside world on a regular basis through their employees are going to win.
And they're doing it on LinkedIn. I mean, the companies that empower, I mean, I've seen so many, I mean, look at, there's some amazing folks on LinkedIn who are representing their companies out there and showcasing them in an authentic way.
Yeah.
It's not forced. It's not an advertorial. They're doing it because they're empowered and because they want to attract, there's no better tool to attract new employees and current employees.
That's right.
There's nothing better. You don't need to hear from the CEO. You need to see people loving their job. It's incredible. I see Darren McKee, like we was talking about with his company and what they're doing there. The folks over at Beehive, what they're doing there, the employees are empowered.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing to see. And that's also thought leadership, right? When you're putting yourself there as thought leadership, like, I want to work for her. I want to work for her because she just went up there on LinkedIn and she put up a whole thing on X, Y, and Z topic that's relevant to me. That means a lot. I align with what she's saying. I align with her values. And I would love to work at a company like that versus just reading some bullshit job description and benefit bullet points.
That goes back to my 5-to-1 give to ask content ratio.
Well, what is that, Craig?
Well, Adam, glad you asked. When you are asking your employees to talk about work and talk about what they love about the company and their job, don't just give them job descriptions to post out and ask people to refer applicants to. That's just asking all the time. And that's no way to build a network. And it's no way to empower your employees and help them to grow their networks. So give them interesting and helpful, funny, and or entertaining things to post 5 times for every 1 time you ask them to post a job out.
There you go. There's your pro tip here. So let's bring it home here. This has been fantastic. And one last point just to give the whole life cycle here is retention, employee retention out there. Well, listen, I think right now people are sitting tight. I think they're sitting on their hands. There's a lot of uncertainty out there in the economy,
That's
the
right.
world stage, politics, drama out there, which sucks for us recruiters
Mm-hmm.
in most fields. Aside from some
Churn is
evergreen.
low. That's right.
Churn is low right now. People are, well, historically, this time of year, a lot of folks are waiting to the new year some people are bonus eligible. Some people from an optics perspective like to see the calendar year. It's a real thing. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to start a new job till 2024. But retention and companies kind of mitigating fear about the economy. I mean, what's your finger on the pulse here?
So if you are doing those things that we just talked about and engaging your employees in part of the process of attracting great new people, that is one of the best things you can possibly do to aid in retention. Make them part of the process and advertise to them, right? The great things about your company on a regular basis. Don't just advertise to the outside world. Make sure that your leaders and your employees are also seeing your efforts to talk about what a great place it is to work.
Absolutely. I love it here. So, Craig, let's bring it home here. Tell us who the book is for. Who should be picking up this book? Who should be putting in their stockings for Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and all the other holidays out there that I'm not purposely leaving out?
Yeah. So really any business that wants to grow their organizations with kindness and empathy, this book would be great for. Hiring managers, talent acquisition leaders, HR people, job seekers even. There's plenty in this for job seekers about branding yourself and getting yourself on the radar of the people that you'd like to do work with. And then certainly recruiters and your friends and family, they'd all love it. It's fun.
And it makes a great holiday gift. And Craig, where could folks get this book?
Hiring-humans.com is where to find this book.
Hiring-humans.com. I'm going to post this all up in the show notes. Craig Fisher, I want to thank you so much. Wait, World Series prediction?
Rangers in 6.
Rangers in 6. You heard it here first. And if you're listening live, thank you so much for joining us and spending your lunch hour or your brunch hour, depending if you're on the West Coast. We appreciate your time. Craig, I appreciate you and your knowledge. We're going to link up where to buy the book in the show notes. Craig, where else can folks find you? Where could they connect? Where could they learn more?
I am at FishDogs on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me easily on LinkedIn or just do a Google search, Craig Fisher and the word recruiting or talent or anything like that. I'm everywhere.
And there you have it, folks. Tim Friedman, thank you for the kind words below. Remember, everybody, you can find out more at thePOZcast.com. Follow us on all the social media channels. Remember, take care of each other. Look out for one another. Be good to each other. Be better to yourself. Oh, be good to yourself and be better to others. That's the way that one goes.
Gotta work on that.
I do. And everyone out there, enjoy your Thursday and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.